All right, we'll start with this public caucus. Tonight we have Business Administrator Larry West, the Finance Director Matt Domines, and OECD Director Eileen Cipriani to come in and give us an overview of the capital budget, which appears on our agenda this evening. So the floor is yours, and then if we have any questions, we'll ask them after.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Thanks for having us tonight to talk a little bit about the capital budget. Pursuant to Section 904 of the Charter, the administration submitted the proposed capital budget to City Council by its time, August 15th. So before you, you see you should have two copies. One is going to be the explanation and narrative, and the second is going to be a line-by-line item of the proposed 2023 capital budget. We went through this exercise last year. As you might recall, it is current year plus 5 with some explanation as to really how we plan on, at least initially vetting these projects and how we could potentially pay for them as we move forward. I think I mentioned it last year, and I think it's worth repeating. I believe the capital budget in years past had been referred to as this wish list in terms of capital investment that departments or administrations had thought that they could put on a list and at some point fund or find a way to make these projects happen. Over the last 2 years, we've really taken the capital budget process and really made it into a tool that I think demonstrates the needs that the city has, and it's also an opportunity for us to catalog and maintain these projects. You'll see that this list for this year is a little different than it was last year. Again, normally you would carry current year plus the next 5. Last year's 2023 budget and 2024 budget didn't nearly have the same total expenditure that you'll see this year. I think that's easily explained. That's why I asked Eileen Cipriani to join us here this evening. That's easily explained the fact that we have some ARPA dollars teed up and aligned with some of these projects. So if you'll indulge me, and feel free to, if you want to ask any questions along the way, I'll kind of walk through it, and I'll go in order. So basically we'll start at the top. You'll see that there's a list there for buildings and maintenance. I think it's a secret. We've been working, the business administration has been working to try to button up some of the issues here at City Hall. And again, I'm not going to touch on every one, so if you see something, if I skip over, please feel free to stop me. But there are other buildings and maintenance issues that we have out there. So let me start with the public safety building, also known as the Sorrenti building. I know it's been a discussion back and forth. I'm working here since last June, and I know there's been some changes even since last year about Sorrenti. And Eileen, I know you could probably talk a little better about it or talk more to it, but suffice to say that there have been some questions and some funding sources and some revamping of some plans up there. We have done some work, but at the end I know we're still moving, we're moving in an equitable way up there to get Sorrenti so where it's even more usable than what it is today. There are portions of it that are currently occupied and utilized, and there are other portions that need some additional work. Do you want to comment any more on that?
So the first paragraph, the $125,000, that was originally an LSA that was for HVAC. That is in front of the Commonwealth Financing Authority now for rescoping so that we can scope it for the classroom and the evidence room, and we will transfer the HVAC cost to the ARPA funding so that we're able to use that pot of money for that.
So was that something that was presented to us in the past, say last year?
The HVAC with ARPA? Yes,
Correct.
It's in the ARPA spending plan.
Now, I know there were some grants. We talked about some of the grants over the last 2 years that were up there. I know there was a plumbing, like $35,000, $40,000 with maybe plumbing, electrical, things like that. When Chief Carroll came in, I'd say over a month ago, he said some of the grants had stalled. Now, some of those grants that we thought were on the horizon, have they stalled in terms of the Sorrenti Center?
Have the grants stalled?
Yes.
I don't know.
The grants may not have been awarded. I only know of this 125 that's out there right now. Plus
Okay, yeah, that's what's on the table right now. Do you know offhand what ones weren't awarded?
I don't know. They were before I started. They were applied for.
Okay,
We could ask the chief.
okay. How about, Mr. West, would you know what grants had stalled? If, say, 6 grants were applied for, we got 3 awarded, anything like that?
I do not. I don't know which ones, but I'll make a note and I'll report back to you, Mr. Schuster. I'll find out for you. I'm not aware, nothing, my recollection doesn't talk to any grants that were stalled. The one I was familiar with is the LSA grant.
Just to give it in general, I felt that the work up there was moving along smoothly and that we had grants to cover some of the bigger projects that were happening. But again, as for that presentation, it made it seem like some of those grants had stalled.
The only thing I could tell you, if you're talking about something stalled or work being stalled, is that there was a grant for HVAC. The monies that were allotted, I think it was a couple $100,000 we had allotted for HVAC. When we did get the cost estimates back, they were double the cost. I'm not sure if that was COVID-related or where that was. We did not have enough money to cover the costs just solely based on grants. So if that's what you're referencing, and I think we repurposed some of those dollars, right? That's the 25,000. Yeah.
So this is okay, it's being repurposed. It's not to cover something that we came up short on, it's repurposed.
Yep.
So the money that we asked for in the ARP plan is to cover the HVAC.
Okay.
If you recall, I forgot to mention, we repurposed a grant that was for the Leonard Theater last year, because the time frame was going to run out on that, and put that into cover costs that were already expended up at the Sorrenti Center.
Okay. Let me just go down quickly on one other issue here, and I want to just bring it up. There was a request for replace 2 doors and add an emergency exit up at DPW. That was a request that had gone in last year. It's back in for this year, looking for some monies to be allocated for next year, but I believe we're going to try, we have some dollars for this year. We may move to get those projects done this year. We've had some insurance folks visiting based on our insurance, liability insurance, and they recommended we take care of some of those things this year. So some of the things that you see in here, such as those doors, emergency exits, they may actually be addressed by the close of business this year. So I want you to keep that in mind. So if I could slide over and move down to City Hall, the restoration continued. I think you recall we were awarded $1.5 million last year in RACP to continue the restoration. We did the South Tower was completed. The administration put out an RFP or Q for engineering services to continue on with that process. I believe that process is wrapped up and we have awarded.
Legislation will be in front of council for next week.
To award that engineer on the project. So that's moving forward as well. There's some things in here listed for rock salt facilities. As you know, DPW does have a rock salt facility at its location up on Poplar. Sure.
The City Hall.
Your mic. Just
The City Hall expansion.
expansion?
Yeah, I think you kind of skipped over that.
I didn't get down to it yet.
Well, okay, it was before the rock salt, okay.
Yeah, because there's a salt shed at the beginning, there's a salt shed at the end. I didn't get down to it yet. It's on there. I haven't highlighted it. I'll talk to you about it.
Okay.
So the salt shed, there's two of them listed on there. One is for an existing salt shed, the other one is for a salt shed off premises. It says west and south side. The one that's on premises up there right now actually needs to be restored. There is a canvas canopy system that's on it that has, I'm not sure the length that it's been on there, but it's been on for some time. It's seeing some wear. There are holes in it, and as you know, holes, when rain comes through, gets in the rock salt, it deteriorates the salt, creates all kinds of other problems. So that's probably going to end up being a priority for next year if we can. The west and south side salt sheds that you see listed, they are something that we are looking at as an administration to see if there's an opportunity to, one, have additional capacity to store salt, and then two, during significant snowstorms, that we have the ability to have our crews that are out salting the roads, that there's a quicker return on getting salt into our vehicles, getting them on the streets. So we're looking at both of those things. To your point of the City Hall expansion, so, and I know it's always a discussion, we put it out there to take a look at it. City Hall, as you know, has been built in 1885. It's the way, when it was built, I don't think our forefathers could have envisioned that there was, so much changing in municipal government. The idea at one point, and it was prior to this administration and prior to the Mayor Cognetti, was to maybe relocate City Hall. I think that kind of fell off. I've been an advocate of preservation of this building, and so has the mayor. So in talking about that and doing a true overhaul preservation, expansion of services for a whole host of reasons, and I've talked to Eileen Cipriani regarding EDA compliance. Eileen and her department really focus on EDA compliance and safety. There's an opportunity to take a look to see how we are actually looking to enhance or enable operations here at City Hall that we could either further expand on or at least have someone come in and tell us how we could better utilize space that we currently have here within City Hall. All the while, we're looking to, I don't think it's a secret, we have parts of this building that need to be restored. We still use the old HVA system. We have black pipe system throughout the city, or throughout the building. If you go in certain corners of the building, you'll see that there's some serious deterioration and needs some attention. So we just need to, I think we would bring someone in and take a look to see if we're using the building to its highest best use, make sure we are ADA compliant and that we are making sure that the building is secure and for safety reasons.
So, but the way I read this is there's an estimated cost of $1.8 million to purchase another building. Now, let me finish, please. Thank you. Possibly the building next door. Is that in the thought process, buying Fidelity next door?
Is it a possibility?
Is it in the thought process right now?
Well, I think it's a possibility. I think I don't think we should just limit ourselves to that opportunity. There are other opportunities along Mulberry Street that we could take a look at. So I wouldn't just limit it to that building, but I think it's an opportunity.
My thoughts are, first of all, I think we're restoring this building for a reason. Of course, it's beautiful, and I think it's sufficient now. Just coming out of Act 47, you don't buy a second house when you can barely afford your first house. And in addition, the building, if it was purchased next door, you're taking it off the tax rolls. So there are my concerns with that piece. I did take a good look at the capital budget. This is an issue I have. I don't agree with it. But let me ask you this, and let me ask anybody in this room. So tonight, if I vote yes for this, is this in stone, or does this come back around again for final approval? No. This piece, or other pieces I disagree with in the capital budget?
No, I think the well, let me explain to you. First, I appreciate you bringing up the question. The capital budget is just a guideline. I had opened up my comments with, at one point, it was referenced as a wish list. We are required by ordinance to submit this capital budget. Listen, we could take that capital budget for the City Hall expansion, we could put it in 2023, we could bump it to 24, we could put it at 25, we could put it at 27, and every year we come back, or we can keep bumping it to the year after. This does not allocate any dollars toward anything. It is just a guideline that allows us as administrators in the city to give us a guideline and a tool that we can project what capital expenses we might be able to take on from year to year. Next year, the revenues may not allow for $10 million worth of capital improvement. Maybe it's only $6 million. We have to go back toward the capital list and pull out and reprioritize every single year. So this is just a guideline. You are not committing to anything other than understanding that this is a proposed capital budget. And that they're estimated costs, by the way. They're not even...
No, I understand the timeline and the importance when it has to be done, and I understand that it's pretty much a wish list.
Yeah.
I get that, but I just don't want, and this is nothing with disrespect to you guys, but I don't want to come back later and say, well, Jesus, council approved the capital budget, so, that pretty much means they want to buy a building, or possibly the building next door. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure I do, and with all due respect, Mr. McAndrew, we can't spend out of the capital budget. It has to be approved in the operating budget, so there's nothing in here that handcuffs city council to the administration on the capital budget. It's just a guideline.
I just want clarification.
These, just to clarify that too, these fall under the capital improvement section, each line item in the operating budget.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's where they would show up when we go through the operating budget.
Yes.
When we're looking at these two pieces, the usage study and the expansion.
Yep.
The usage study, the cost is and I understand that they're just estimates.
Yep.
The usage study is $125,000. Is that usage study for just this building alone?
The usage study would take a look at existing space and what would potentially be needed if we were if we were at full capacity, meaning if we were to lay out our OECD department, our code enforcement, ADA compliance, having accessibility for our residents, all those things, it'd be a usage of the entire building.
But just to clarify that, so would that cover, DPW, Weston Field, Sorrento, in terms of the space that's available in those, just for clarification there?
That's fair, and to be candid, we could certainly include all those things in the RFP when we put it out there. This was kind of focused here at
Just-
City
okay.
Hall for usage, but we could certainly include all those components if we'd like in the
So that's
RFP.
I don't think we're leaning towards that route. My question was just the cost of $125,000, if that was for the study of this building alone. With the next item as the expansion, it does say in there that maintaining a facility such as this fictitious building that we didn't purchase yet, is going to cost about $500,000 a year. Where did we derive at the number of, this new building would cost about $500,000 a year to maintain and operate?
Again, they're all just cost estimates, understanding square footage, light usage, power, heating bills. They're all just insurance.
So is it
They're cost estimates.
Is it estimated on square footage or?
It's all those things. It's estimated on the square footage, the usage, the existing, if we're going to put a price tag on its assessed value, it's all those things. We have to insure it, liability. You want to add?
So I guess when I say about the study, I'm asking, does it
We didn't
pertain to
know-
just this building and this possible future building as well?
We don't know what that building is, so we can't put an exact square footage on it. There's more just like a round estimate.
That's why I asked, because we have a dollar amount on it, but if we don't know
Right.
what the building is, I don't know how we derived at a dollar amount.
Well, again, they're all just cost estimates. So in order for us, to Matt's point, if we're going to be specific on a specific building, which we have not determined, we could get closer numbers on it. But that's just an estimate of an analysis of what we cost here. We could talk about our operating budget now at another time, but the increase of gasoline, as an example, has doubled what we had budgeted for the year, right? So they're numbers and budgets, a guideline, and they are a cost estimate. There's no fixed number on that. They're not held to.
Yeah. Do you know offhand what this building costs to maintain and operate per year?
Not today. I could find out based,
I was just wondering for size purposes, and if you said that this building costs $500,000, then I know what size of a building.
I think this
you're
building would be a
looking
little
to-
unfair based on the height and to heat it and air conditioned building. It's costly to maintain this building.
I think the thing that's shocking is $500,000 seems like a pretty high number, and the part that's a little hard for me to accept is that I'm hearing we don't want a pool because of the annual operating costs, which might be $200,000 or $250,000. I'd rather spend $250,000 to maintain a pool than, I don't know, buy another building, take it off the tax rolls, and who knows what. I realize what we're trying to do here.
Yeah,
These are
if I can, I don't want to get bogged down in the weeds on these things. I'm glad you have questions on it, and I'm glad to meet with you on them. I think if we can, I'd like to get through more of the line items. If you have specific questions, I'm glad to take them and answer them for you. Again, I don't want to get caught up on the dollars and cents per se, because they're all just cost estimates. And when the time comes, there'll be further discussion about what City Hall would look like. This is not just, one little thing in a barrel here. This is a longer discussion. It's just that this is just a guideline of what we think future operations might look like, and we're just preparing to incur some costs and some capital vision.
Yeah, I think going forward with these two well, actually with the expansion piece, if we could just get a cost analysis or a cost estimate on a building of this size, what it would take off the tax rolls, that'd be a big help. I know when the county bought the Globe Store, I know the price on that, just in the school district alone, in taxes that were lost there, so.
Listen, I think all those things need to be taken into account when the time comes. Listen, it may come down that there's really no need for, but I think we'd be foolish if we didn't take a look at it, at least put it on the radar. It's a possibility. Okay. Any other questions on it? All right. I'm going to bump down to the fire. The Rescue 1 vehicle replacement, that vehicle is actually, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag for the fire chief, he's not here, but that vehicle is about to be delivered in short order. So that capital expenditure, although it has not come to fruition yet, it will be shortly. So that first payment will come out this year, and then we'll move forward with those expenditures moving out over the next 4 or 5 years. You'll see a couple more vehicles listed in there, inspector's vehicles, assistant chief's vehicle. I think the assistant chief is actually using a vehicle that came in. I think the city had bought 4 or 5 Ford Escapes, or I'm not sure what the model is. They're the smaller vehicles that, so I think the chief was looking to upgrade the assistant chief and move a vehicle over there. Special services vehicle, I believe that vehicle, there's a two-year build on that. I believe he's ordering it either later this year or early next year, if that actually hasn't moved yet. And then you'll see there's a new ladder truck and new engines. Again, I think that the chief has it right, looking out to 2025. Those vehicles are not, they're not insignificant, they're expensive. Planning how we when and the timeliness of when, we purchase new vehicles and rotate the fleet, I think is being very prudent with the taxpayer money. And you'll see he lays that out over the next 24, 25, and 26. You'll see a couple of additional feasibility studies on there. Councilman McAndrew, I know you're familiar with one of them. I think the chief had talked to you about the center for the training center. But the other, so Engine 10, as you know, was built in, maybe you don't know, the building was built in the 1960s. The building, when it was built, is not the most efficient building. There have been some repairs to it to kind of keep it together, but it is not conducive to today's world in terms of firefighting and housing, equipment and personnel, separation of gear and carcinogens and all the things that kind of go with it. But that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, we're looking at feasibility to see what that might look like to replace that building.
This is Engine 10 on East Mountain, correct?
Yeah, Engine 10 up on East Mountain. So that's only for the building. That's not the vehicle, or it's just the building itself, a feasibility on it. You have any questions on fire? No? Move down to PD.
Well, before you move on,
Sure.
the next one, after the Engine 10 building feasibility.
Yep.
Is the Public Safety Training Center.
Yep.
There's another feasibility study there.
Yeah.
So this would be purchasing another piece of property or a
No.
piece of property the city already owns?
No, I don't think it's either. You mind if I opine on it? Look, I know it's already been discussed at a public meeting up at the CTC, and the councilman could actually, if you'd like to go ahead, feel free.
Well, they're looking to have like a burn house and training center on our property where I work at the CTC. I mean, they're just putting together, it's a discussion at this point, but
Right.
I think it would be a great integrated learning project for our students that are in that program, protective service program, and an opportunity for other departments that could come and also use that and train, and maybe it become revenue producing. So it's still in the thought process. I understand that, and there's I agree that there's a need for it, and it's some land that we could, utilize that we don't at this point. I think it'll be a win for everybody with regard to training and education purposes. So, like I said, it was explained well to me. I like the idea. Funding's going to be an issue, but they're looking into every different avenue. Maybe that can come from some of our end through Perkins grants. So it's just a start. They're just starting to talk about it.
I can elaborate a little bit more on that, and thanks for that.
But that's basically
You summarize it.
the
You summarize
synopsis.
it good. So there's an opportunity. The CTC has land up at the end of up in North Scranton. It's not off of Rockwell, Greenbush Street up in the city's north end. This is the Career Technology Center. They have some opportunities up there. They have a lot of vacant land around the CTC. Discussions with the chief. This doesn't really impact our ability to train firefighters here, but it provides a place where we can continuously train our fire department and our police department and any other emergency services that so choose to utilize it. We have been in discussions with the local college that may be willing to work with us and partner with us on some other aspects of public safety training. It's just that right now it's just a thought. There may be an opportunity. The folks up at the CTC seemed somewhat interested in continuing those conversations, so we put that in there as a placeholder for feasibility to see what that does look like if the city takes on that liability. I do know Chief Judge has been pretty clear about this, that having a training facility within the city's confines of the city will indeed help improve our ISO rating for homeowners and insurance and businesses and their insurance. So there are all kinds of moving parts with it, but again, just put a placeholder in there as an opportunity to take a look to say we can hire someone to say, hey, is this feasible for us to pursue? And what does that like working in collaboration with some other public entities?
When we're looking at these three studies, I mean, the first one was City Hall for $125,000.
Yep.
The second one's building for Engine 10 at $100,000. And this third one here is $120,000. Is this the standard rate for feasibility studies such as this, or they're all the same?
So they're all similar. Again, that would have to be put out for a bid. You could, Eileen could elaborate a little bit more on the feasibility studies and the process and why we actually do them.
Yeah, and actually, since, in the last couple of years, we've done a number of them, and they've led directly to grant funding. And today, we've learned we got Robinson Park funding, which was a direct result of the park feasibility study. So what they do is lay the groundwork for us to get funded in other potential rounds. As far as the price, it's going to depend on what we actually put in the RFQ. So what we generally do is we establish all the standards that we want to meet, but when it's an RFQ, you could actually negotiate backwards. So if you have a budget in mind of, say, $100,000, and the RFQs, if the vast majority of them come in and their prices are $200,000, then you have to look and negotiate with the vendors to remove items that maybe were more of a luxury and not a necessity in the RFQ. So it's something that can be managed. Generally, we see RFQs for studies, they do come back in that $150,000 mark. That seems to be.
So that would be
norm.
the standard rate for
Right.
such a study?
And I haven't looked at all of them in here, but a number of them we have targeted for local share grant applications.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to PD. I think last year we did fund a lot of the police department's requests, so a lot of them have been taken off. But you'll see there are some requests there for some tactical things, some vests, special operations group requests for some long-term investments here. You will see one in here about the patrol vehicle fleet. We've been working with the chief on that. Obviously, that's always something that comes up regarding our vehicles, the maintenance schedules, keeping the fleet up to standard. It's inevitable. We have police cars that respond 24/7 here, and I mean the vehicles themselves. I don't just mean police officers. Some of those vehicles literally run 24/7. So there's maintenance issues on them, and then unfortunately we do have those untimely accidents where some of our vehicles get sidelined for some time while they get physical repairs, accident repairs on them. So our fleet, although it's still holding its own, there are some improvements need to happen. So that's where that line item comes in for the patrol cars. I think the rest of the things that were talked about in there are pretty much standard in terms of the PD's requests. I don't know if there's anything that sticks out to anybody in there. If not, I'll move down to DPW.
I just want to touch on the body camera and tasers, because I know we've met about that. So
Yep.
the current body cameras we have are basically first generation, correct? Where you have to manually turn on the body camera, but the new generation ones are if you unholster your taser, you unholster your weapon, and your body camera isn't turned on, it will automatically turn on.
Correct.
Which,
And also the car cameras, the new generation, the moment you put the emergency lights on, your car camera automatically goes on. When you do come into within, I don't know the exact range, but if you pull into police headquarters, all the information, all the data that your cameras had collected throughout your shift automatically downloads into your file. So there are some improvements in technology that have caught up. We're just looking, that's something that even Chief Nemeka had asked for. Now Chief Carroll's asking for it. I believe the city has applied for, or we're preparing to apply for a federal grant to help offset some of those costs.
Yes, we did apply for a community grant. You probably have seen it.
Yes.
Congressman Cartwright has announced that he'll be awarding the city $3.5 million for that.
awesome.
So that's, again, that may happen this year or next year, depending. We'll move that off the line. So DPW, again, there are a lot of DPW's equipment.
Excuse me, Mr. Witt,
Sure.
before we move on. The last one there is Emergency Operations Center.
Yep.
It doesn't say the location of this. Is this something that's still in the works? Is this something we're thinking, is this the Sorrenti Center? What would this area be?
That's something that the chief asked to look at. Right now, we utilize PD headquarters as a center during significant events. The police chief just asked to look to see if there was some way we can either bolster those services or location. So that is just up there. That's
Would that feasibility study look into possible secure,
Quite possibly.
secure locations that could
Quite
serve as an
possibly.
alternate site?
correct. So the operations during significant events, parade day, other big events
Yes.
that happen in the city, I know it may seem seamless, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of work going on, and I don't need to tell that here, but I think you understand. And as those events become bigger and more significant, I think the city should be looking at a proactive approach to making sure that our public safety community has the resources it needs to make sure that our community
Yeah,
is safe.
I was just trying to clarify if it's one of our existing facilities or if it's something extra.
There's no one, it's not specific. I think it's looking at it as a whole. Is the current location, is it a different location? Is it part of another conversation, Sorrenti? That's something we need to talk about. And again, it's a placeholder, not to be lost in discussion, but it's a placeholder that we could maybe get to revisit next year when the timing is right. Okay? Done a DPW. Again, there's a list of equipment that's in there. I don't think it's any secret that, our DPW equipment running around in rock salt and mostly unfavorable conditions when we utilize it. It does take a beating, no different than it was yesterday and last night. Our DPW crews did a great job working that storm last night. Again, it may have seemed seamless, but there was a lot of things going on during the course of the day yesterday in that rainstorm. So they did a great job. But anyway, you'll see there's a few things in there. Some of them are contingent upon, expansion of a salt shed or a new salt shed that we'd buy additional loaders and equipment for whatever. But again, those things at DPW, minus, and I'll touch on it if you come all the way down, we talked about equipment for, a box truck for the basin crew. You may have seen our yellow basin crew truck out there. I don't know the year, but I'm not so sure how many more inspection cycles the vehicle has on it, so something they put in, we put in this year to make sure that we put on the list that it needs to be addressed at some point. And again, some of it's replacing existing equipment, putting it on a timeline to say, 3 or 4 years from now, it'll run its life and we need to replace it. But I want to touch really on the Kaiser Valley Stormwater design and eventually the Stormwater grant and some construction here. Eileen and I were talking earlier that the brick grant that we applied for, again, I think we make a very compelling argument that our Kaiser Valley community needs some assistance in it. Again, we were there again last night on Merrifield, and I got a call today about Merrifield. So I know that water runs down a few of the streets that come off the mountain over there. So I get it. We've done the analysis and the study, so now it's kind of looking for implementation, which is what the brick grant is. However, and I'll let Eileen opine on this, we talked earlier today about maybe moving the needle and putting this out and getting some design work on it. And I'll let Eileen talk about that. And that's something that we have listed here in the capital budget.
So with the Kaiser Valley Stormwater design, we have match is part of the ARPA funding, and the rest would come out of a potential grant. Our concern right now is that there is a backlog in the federal government of reviewing these grants. I asked Nossaman, lobbyists, to take a look at it and reach out and figure out what the timeline is. We may pull that grant application back out and attempt to fund it with the stormwater dollars from ARPA, because it's going to take a long time and we have a short timeline with our ARPA funding. So if we think it's going to take too long for them to decide on the awards, we might move forward with the design, because it is a critical problem.
Is that pump house right now currently running? The pump house on Merrifield, is that currently running?
Yes, it is. Both pumps are running. They're both running last night, yesterday and last night. And we did augment that with another mobile trash pump as well, make sure that we stayed ahead of it, which we did.
Those pumps there, the pumps are newer, but the building is old. Am I correct with that?
Are the pumps new and the building is older?
Yeah, the pumps I feel like were replaced more recently, but.
I think the
building-
pumps have been, I've had work done on them over the years, not since I've been here. They have been replaced, upgraded, whatever, but I don't think that's necessarily the issue. From what I'm told is that there's only certain capacity that could pump out no matter what you put there. So it's the underground infrastructure that's been existing there for years that just doesn't keep up. So when we bring the portable trash pump in, we move the lines down, we put it down past the field and it goes down over South Dewey Street. And so it's a little bit of extra work, but I think for the time being, it's what we have to do to make sure that the neighborhood stays, flood-free.
I've seen that done in the past. Was it done last night?
Last night, we ran it again, yeah.
Okay, and it runs down Dewey, down
South
into
Dewey,
the,
down to the catch basin. It just discharges into
and
Kaiser
it flows
Creek.
into that canal?
Yep.
Okay.
But we have to close the road, we have to detour the road because that's where the lines have to come out, and we can't have vehicles cut through the lines, so. But it was done last night again.
Okay, I know the storm before that, I didn't see it done, so I didn't know if it was something we were doing this year.
Yeah, no, I can't give why they do some, why they don't, but yesterday afternoon, we had the trash pump hooked up, pulled out, and prepared. We did use it for a short period of time on and off, which maybe is what kept it at bay. I don't, Okay. All right.
Eileen, quickly, so you just said that you might totally fund the Kaiser Valley Stormwater project with the ARPA money because, or the study, I'm
Just
sorry.
design.
The
But-
design, I'm sorry.
design.
All right, but then the brick grant, if that is awarded later, can that money be repurposed?
The
Or if
grant
you-
would be entirely for construction, it's not for design.
Okay. Thanks for
Now, the
clarifying.
Kaiser Valley study has been completed, right?
The
Okay.
study's done, but we need the design to be done now.
Okay.
All right. Moving down on the second page, we've listed Webster Avenue sidewalk and bridge project. Again, that's the one down on South Webster Avenue.
And just to clarify that, because I know that's been an issue for a while, there's no issue with the structural integrity of that bridge whatsoever, correct? It's just the
It's the cantilevered sidewalks on both sides that
on the
have
side
issue.
of it, yes.
Yep.
Because when that was built, right, they were added on after the fact. It wasn't the sidewalks and the,
They were added on several decades later, and the underlying structural steel on the sidewalks is what's failing.
all right, thank you.
I wasn't here for that, Kyle. I wasn't. So move down to FEMA flood control projects. This is something, we have $3 million listed out there. I think it's important. I need to reiterate a few things here about it. It's slightly confusing, but I'll do my best to explain it. Those FEMA projects date back a couple of years ago from a flood storm event here in the city for a litany of reasons. Some projects were completed, others weren't. Over COVID, we were allowed extensions on it. We got to the point now where some of the projects that are still lingering out there still need to be completed. The mayor, myself, and a few others from administration went down and met with the folks from Fema and put our best pitch on. We've been granted an additional extension on it for 18 months to get those projects completed. They are 75% federal reimbursed and 25% from the state, which means they're 100% reimbursable. But there's a lot of paperwork tracking in that, and we also have to pay the bill and then get reimbursed the money. The return, to be clear, the return that comes back in, the federal government is about a 15 or 20-day turnaround on the payment. The state is not so much. They're much longer. So two things have to happen. One, we need to have the resources in the city that we have a fund that we could kind of have liquidity to it, that we could put the monies out upon payment completion of the projects and then be refunded and then continue on. So we have to have some dollars available, but we have $3 million listed there. That was an initial estimate from FEMA, not PEMA, but from FEMA from a couple of years ago. Again, like everything else, some of those costs have escalated. There may be some opportunities for our own crews to do some of this work and get reimbursed for the time and material, but we're still working through that. We have our city project manager, Kelsey Whittick, is walking through that right now with our friends at FEMA to make sure that what we could do, we're in compliance and we could be reimbursed for the work that's getting done. But I didn't want you to see that $3 million and say, hey, I thought the last estimate was about $3.5 million or $3.6 million of work out there, which really probably equates to about $6 or $7 million now in today's dollars. But that's what those projects are.
And that was from the August, I think it was August 2018.
I believe you're right, it's from the flooding event of 2018.
So with these emergency events, the state dedicates an emergency event number, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat
So
that?
the state, FEMA or PEMA dedicate an emergency event number, correct?
They do, FEMA did, yeah.
So is this one emergency event from 18, or was there a previous event that occurred?
No, I believe these are all from this single event. They were just
Single
different.
event.
Right, so when FEMA comes out, and PEMA comes out and does an evaluation after the event, they rank the proposed issues, if you will, right? They give them a ranking. There's a timeline for each one of them. Some we met back in 2018 or 19, whenever we started some of these projects. Others we did not. We went down again, and we made a pitch to PEMA to advocate on our behalf to FEMA, which they did do. FEMA did grant us an additional 18-month extension on it. So they did set a price, but they're not held to it. It's just they're held to, in other words, we can't do additional work. If they estimated that there were, I don't know, 1,000 yards of gravel in one of the creek beds that need to be removed, and all of a sudden we go remove 2,000 yards, they're not going to pay us for the additional 1,000 yards. They'll give us what they had estimated. Now, the cost may differ from what they had estimated 3 or 4 years ago, but they're not going to pay us for things that have happened subsequent from the initial.
Yeah, so some of that work was done, some of the things
Some
that
of
were
the work was
identified?
done, yes.
Okay. Do we have a timeline for now the future work?
We're actually working that out. That's going to come with two things. One is availability to kind of group some of these projects together, and then it's going to come down to what work we could do internally and what work we have to subcontract out. And then the last piece is how do we get our liquid funds to make sure that we're able to pay the bills as they're coming in and get the return on the reimbursements.
Has that timeline or list of projects been
This is just
But
real time. This is
compiled
some-
yet?
We were just notified, was it last week or the week before, that we got the okay on this.
Well, we
So we're
got
working on
we
it.
got the okay because the deadline was up, and you had to go down and apply for an extension, correct?
Yeah, I'm saying where did we got the extension?
Okay.
Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, well, what I'm asking is, has the list been compiled of the projects that need, prior to, so we're going back to 2018.
Yep.
This list should have been compiled since 2018,
Oh,
correct?
yeah, there's an existing list of projects. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I thought you meant our timeline moving forward, like, when we're going to do the projects. That I
Yeah.
don't know.
So I'm just trying to clarify. So the deadline was up, we got an extension granted, but now we do have a timeline of when we're going to start these projects?
That's that part, yes. So the projects are listed, and we are working on the timeline, which ones we could couple together, which ones we could put out together, ones we're going to do internally, ones we're going to put out for bid. So, yes, we are working that out as we speak. That's part
Or
of
are they prioritized as of now, or that's what's going to be doing? That's what you're going to be doing at this point, is
No,
prioritizing?
our project manager's working on that work right now. And that's something that we could do that, like in the next month or so. We'll be working on getting those projects out the door.
So in the next month or so, we should
Yeah,
see some of
should
those
see movement
starting?
on some of them, yep.
Okay.
So I won't get too deep in the weeds on the streetscapes. I think we've talked about it. I will touch a little bit on the bridges, only because they do come up and they are an expense. I think you know, and I could touch a little bit on it today. We closed the Myler Street Bridge on Friday. One of our operators drove over. It had been reduced in terms of tonnage, and then we had some delineators on the one side on one of the beams. PennDOT recommended that we not drive on them. Last week, one of our loader operators was driving over and heard some weird sounds coming off the bridge. So we immediately responded. We closed the bridge down. We contacted PennDOT. We had a meeting just this morning with PennDOT officials. They are going to come back out. They have to come out and do an inspection on the bridge, but apparently they have to actually have someone in the water. And because of the rain we've had the last couple of days in the forecast, they asked if they could come early next week, pending that they could get in the water there in Roaring Brook. So certainly we have another access way. It may not be the most convenient over Ash Street at this point, but so the Myler Street Bridge will be closed. Will remain closed at least until next week when PennDOT can send up their engineer to do an inspection, a more thorough inspection on Myler Street. So I say that, a little update for you for tonight, but the rest of the bridges, we know we've been working with PennDOT, moving up on the tip. There's 4 bridges. It's West Lackawanna, Elm, Parker, and North Main. PennDOT, that is an 80% federally funded bridge replacement, 15% from state, and there's a 5% local city match. we have laid those projects out, and they will be commencing over the next couple of years. We've had multiple meetings with PennDOT, and we'll report them on them here over the last year or so. But those expenses will be coming due, and those bridges will be under construction. Additionally, PennDOT will be working on the Greenridge Street Bridge. Again, that's not our bridge, but there will be some inconveniences here for city residents. So there's a lot of planning going on in and around detours and emergency planning and all those sorts of things. But suffice to say, those bridges will be under construction. We also talked about, there's also 2 other bridges that PennDOT has been looking to replace. One's on the expressway headed out toward Pittston Avenue. The other one is down on Cedar Avenue. Again, they're both PennDOT bridges, but again, it impacts city traffic. So we've been working with the city that has no cost to us other than the inconvenience to our residents and emergency personnel. But I'm just putting council on notice that there'll be a few bridges under construction over the next couple of years. So just letting you know. And there was an expense from us, 5% for the 4 bridges. Streetscapes, go ahead.
Just on the bridges too, I know that, West Lackawanna, I think, is slated to be started first.
So West Lackawanna, there's emergency declaration on the West Lackawanna
Yes.
Bridge as well. On the north and northwest side wing wall, there is some deterioration. It has been shifting a little bit on the sidewalk. We had got emergency declaration to begin repair work for that. We had to get 2 easements, one's from our redevelopment authority, one was from a local resident, or not a resident, but a landowner there. Actually, we came to a snafu with the landowner, not the redevelopment authority. They gracefully gave us a right-of-way easement, but the other is kind of held up right now. Legal's working on it, but there is an emergency deck on that. But that bridge is prioritized that's under design as well to be replaced.
Okay.
And that's not the river bridge, that's the railroad bridge, on the big bridge going over the west side.
Okay, and then for the Parker Street and North Main, because they'll both affect each other, I believe. Parker Street will be.
I don't believe they're at the same time. I think they're
No,
actually off a
yeah.
year. But
Okay.
you'll recall last year we came in here, we actually bumped up Boulevard Avenue going out toward the recycling center to be
Yes.
repaired because of that detour. So I believe Main Avenue is
Because that will be a detour for both Main Avenue and for Parker Street.
correct.
Right.
And let me just touch again, if you have no other questions on the bridges, the streetscapes, Eileen and her team have been working hard on some grant applications. We've been granted a RACP grant for the Biden streetscape. I know we were awarded some money for Wyoming Avenue, the first 1 and 200 block, and then we've also made a pitch for Adams Avenue. I don't know if you want to comment any more on the streetscape.
Sure. We also have Main Street in West Side that is an awarded multimodal at this point. So we have an application in for Pittston, Adams, as Mr. West said. We have Biden underway. Wyoming is still under the applied for at this point. So we have a few others that we're looking at right now. So as grant opportunities open, we'll continue to put them in. The vast majority of these will match with ARPA. Some other times we'll use some other sources, but we're effectively doubling our ARPA dollars with these streetscape projects. We've also had a conversation with the Appalachian Regional Commission. Based on our economic development study, they're willing to look at funding some other street amenities, so we're working with them to put an application together.
The last thing I want to address in that space is Roaring Brook. I think we're all familiar with the end of Roaring Brook. Once you get over the backside under Chamberlain, it's a concrete channel that takes it all the way to the confluence of the Lackawanna River. As you may be aware, DEP does an evaluation on these flood control projects, all of them in all municipalities. We have been notified for the last couple of years of some portions of that channel deteriorating. So, and you may also know that when either the Army Corps of Engineers or the DEP actually build all these flood control projects, as part of that agreement, the municipality agrees to maintain those flood control projects in perpetuity. So that is incumbent upon us to maintain those floodways. So aside from being uber creative with some funding streams to manage some of these flood control projects. The city's on the hook for some of those dollars. So we'll be on the lookout for any dollars available to us to help offset some of those costs, but suffice to say, we have some work to do on some of our existing aging flood control systems. Okay. Move down to Parks and Recreation. There's a whole host of parks there. I know we've kind of talked about the parks feasibility plan here in length numerous times. Some of the projects that are listed in there, really talk to, carrying through on some of the plans that comes out of that feasibility and park plan. We only went out the next couple of years. I think a lot of it has to do with some of the ARPA funding. And Eileen could talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to be clear that, as you're aware, the ARPA funding is not a blanket across the city. There are only certain segments throughout the city that allow for the funding to be used, particularly in parks and resurfacing and things of that nature. So just want to be careful to point out that although there's some dollars allocated, not all ARPA dollars or projects could be funded through the ARPA funding. So again, it's a list of priorities that our Parks Director has thrown out there, and we kind of went through it and vetted it. So we'll plan those things accordingly as the funds are available. And then let me move down to code enforcement. Only a couple of things under code enforcement. Arguably one of the most visible departments we have, but really they're limited to, really for capital improvements. But there is an opportunity, and I have it highlighted here for electric vehicles, but in some charging stations as well. We did receive a grant, and Eileen, you get to opine on this too as well. I know we've been moving it. We were awarded the grant. I believe we're moving forward on agreement on that.
Right, so we just finished the contractual phase of that grant, but we were awarded the two separate grants, one for the vehicle and one for the charging stations. Currently, we're working with PennDOT and the Appalachian Regional Commission. The infrastructure bill that was just recently passed, although the rules have not been promulgated yet, we do know that there will be a phenomenal amount of money situated for electric vehicles. So we're working with NOSSAMN and the PennDOT, as I said, and Appalachian Regional Commission, and a number of cities from Williamsport down to Hazleton, all throughout the Northeast, to look at putting a plan together for a network of electric vehicle charging stations. PennDOT has committed dollars to put charging stations on the main highways, 81, 84, and 80. This would be charging stations in the community. So we need to do the study first to see what type we need. There's a lot of decision points on, and a lot that we need to investigate on that. But we're moving forward on that because there's a real opportunity for funding in these bills that have been passed.
So with that being said, you're going to do a study on feasibility of electrical vehicles? Is that what I just heard? On the charging stations?
In order for us to apply for the charging stations, what we need to know is where they should be, what type they should be. They're slow charging or long charging. A lot of cities around the country are using them as tourism and economic development, where they put them in the downtown where people could come and charge their vehicles while they're at restaurants or shopping or doing what have. So there's apparently a whole science behind it.
So I'm trying to just get my head around a couple things that have been put out. You got the grant for the charging stations? That has been awarded, or for the electric vehicles?
That's awarded. That's only for 10 chargers for our vehicles, which I'm talking about a larger scale.
Okay. And that would be located where? If we do this charging station, it's going to be located at DPW headquarters? Or was there some talk about a garage downtown?
We had been, our own personal charging stations,
Correct.
We had talked about several locations. We haven't landed on a location yet, possibly the Sorrento Center parking lot, 'cause it's nice and fenced in, so it'd be a good place to do it. We have had conversations with the parking authority in the interim to potentially use their charging stations until we're situated and ready to go.
And then, but both of those grants were awarded. I know there's funding out there for electric vehicles.
Yeah, they were awarded.
So the 75, we got a $75,000 grant for electrical vehicles and $213,000 out of the ARPA funds to buy these 10 vehicles. Is that a sufficient amount of money to buy these vehicles?
We didn't start pricing them yet, so that'll be what we'll have to do.
I know we had a conversation, I feel maybe the last time you were in, we talked about the
Right.
cars, and maybe you said like $26,000 a car. Like, I've been looking at the prices of these cars, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be enough money to buy 10 vehicles.
Right, so we're looking at the possibility of purchasing them or leasing them. So we do have some opportunities there. But we just got under contract, so we haven't had an opportunity really to get out and start the procurement process.
Okay. Have we done any research on, what maintenance of these vehicles looks like? How often the batteries need to be changed? Do we know any of
Well,
that?
I know I've heard lots of stories about electric vehicle batteries over 10 years, but I think a good opportunity is for us to look at leasing them because that alleviates that problem from us, so.
I mean, I think leasing would be a better option than buying. It seems like it's a headache, and even though the funds are out there, it might be a headache we're taking on that we don't need.
So we'll be doing that research in the near future.
So what about the maintenance of the vehicles? I know they require special equipment and special training for that. Is that part of the thought process as to who's going to do that for us? Or is that going to be part of a lease deal, or?
They're all things that need to be worked out, Councilman. That's a great question. That's something we need to work out. If it's a lease, are they responsible for maintenance? I guess it's just almost like a personal lease where they do the maintenance on the upkeep. I've never driven an electric car, so I couldn't tell you what they do, but that's all part of our process. We'll go into and do our due diligence on to make sure that, the maintenance, the contracts and the servicing is all included so that we're not driving vehicles that we can't maintain or get maintained. If I can, just get down to the last piece, which is IT. I think that, I think we could always continue to make investments in our IT and our infrastructure. Last year, we had a pretty robust capital improvement listing and funding for IT, which we've been expensing and maintaining and upgrading. So moving over for next year, you'll see there's a few items on there. But basically, they're talking about security enhancements, facilities connectivity, which, believe it or not, I didn't realize it, but a lot of our buildings can't talk to each other electronically, I'm saying. So there are some, I don't know the exact number, we have quite a few laptops out there that go throughout all of our departments that get utilized. They do, like everybody else's, they do wear, technology wears on them. So just putting in some placeholders out there for increased investment in some of our technology and our hardware. You'll see telephone system modernization at City Hall. That actually may actually have to happen sooner than later. We were just notified by our carrier that there may be some changes to the old analog system, which is what we currently have, and it may be obsolete sooner than we thought. So we may have to make some adjustments on that before we even move out to 2026. And then some of the things that I think a lot of our IT folks are going to talk about is the connectivity and some of the training spaces, whiteboards, and some of the more modern technology for meeting rooms and such. So there's some things in there that obviously, we will meet some of those things, but others, we'll kind of push them along until we have additional funding or opportunities. And that basically wraps up our budget. And you'll see in the final, the total columns, you're going to see that there was an investment of 8.7 from this year, and then moving forward, 23, 24, there's a significant bump in projected expenditures. Again, a lot of that has to do with, some of it is the $3 million in FEMA for next year. Others are tied to the ARPA funding and the dollars that are available in there. So, and then we kind of tail back down to what we perceive to be a more normal estimate budget of $7 or $8 million. Council have any questions, or do we satisfy you for now? And if you have anything that we missed or you see something in there, feel free to reach out, send them through Mr. Voldenberg, and we'll get them to the right hands to give some
Yeah,
answers.
so I was going to go back to one, but I don't know if anybody has any questions about
Does anyone else have any questions?
No.
garbage trucks. So going back to the DPW portion of the capital budget here, the garbage trucks, it says we're planning on purchasing 2 new garbage trucks in '24 and then '25.
Yep.
Did we receive any new garbage trucks prior to this, or are these the first new trucks to come into DPW?
No, actually, so we have an 11-yard brand-new truck that was just delivered for small containers and our parks. We have 5 additional 20-yard trucks that have been ordered. They should be here before the end of this year. So we're running 13, 14 trucks, garbage trucks. So our fleet is aging. We're still leasing out 2 vehicles. So we put them in there, again, as long as the budget allows for capital investment, that we'll go back and look at some 25-yard garbage trucks for next year. Put
Okay,
them
so-
on a-
so we
There's an
received-
18-month lead on ordering them too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we received the 11-yard truck.
We did,
Okay, when did we receive that one?
the last 4 weeks,
Okay.
4 weeks ago.
All right. And then the 20-yard trucks are
They're
coming soon?
They're ordered, yep.
All right,
There's
how many-
5 of them.
5 of those?
Yep.
Okay. These 2 new trucks here, what size are they going to be?
Again, my guess is they probably be 25 yards. That's what we have a mixture of 20 and 25 yards, mostly 25 yard in our refuse, 20 yards in recycling.
And then like 25 to 30 is the standard?
25 is probably the standard. Don't forget, our city streets are narrow, we have alleyways. Those bigger trucks is tough to navigate, which I think talks to some of the, damaged yards and properties that we see here. We have very narrow alleyways and streets. 25-yard truck is a pretty big vehicle.
Yeah, I think of the, driving back and forth to the dump, because with the smaller trucks, we're going to have to be putting more wear and tear on the vehicles, whether it be hydraulics. Any of the, parts of the machine, there's going to be more wear and tear on them, plus we're going to be driving to the dump more
Well,
often with the smaller truck.
That is, there is a thought to that, and we do have other vehicles, but that we use for recycling, and I know that it was brought up to me by some of the folks up at DPW who had some concerns about it. I did inquire. There would have been additional cost to, again, these were ordered last year, sometime last June, I believe they were ordered. There would have been a penalty and an increased cost for us to switch that over for this year. So we'll figure out, we'll do an analysis on it. We're hoping that maybe Rubicon could help change some of the routing on that so that we could be a little more efficient in when we're picking up. But we'll take a look at it, and if the newer trucks come in and we see the need, we'll move to the 25 yards.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that there was some thought put into
Yep.
the size of the truck there, so
Yep,
we weren't
understood.
making a mistake with the smaller ones.
And they are, obviously, the 25-yard, unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize it, but they increased to a, they call it a double dual axle rear wheels, and then a tag, the drop wheel for a third axle, if there's additional weight. So those 25 yards do that extra 5 yards. It's a lot of extra weight, so you're paying for all those things, and they break. So it's just, we'll see, we'll take a look at it, and we'll do an analysis on it, and if we have to do a 25-yard, we'll move back to the 25 yards.
All
Okay?
right.
Anything
Anyone
else?
have any questions? Thank you very much. We'll take
Thank you,
30
council.
seconds and we'll start our
Thank you.
council meeting.